What's going on, YouTube? Today we're going to be talking about vape pens, why I'm not the biggest fan, and why I personally don't really ever buy them. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and get right on into it. So my biggest issue with vape pens is they're not the experience that I'm looking for. Yes, they're convenient. Yes, they don't smell as much. There's a lot of pros to them, but this video is gonna be all about why I personally don't really buy vapes. And like I just mentioned, they just don't get me where I wanna be. I've had the nicest rosin vapes out there. I've had $50, $70 rosin pens, half gram, whatever. They just don't get me where I want to be due to limitations of the hardware. Have I had ones that are more effective than others? 100%. Have I had ones that definitely like surprised me a little bit? I'll hit them and be like, oh, that kind of got me. That does happen from time to time, but consistently, it is not an experience that gets me where I want to be in terms of effects, regardless of how good the strain is, how good the company is. It's just something that is very hard to achieve and is almost a unicorn. So with that being said, I am someone who would just rather spend the money on something like 8 gram of rosin. I am kind of locked into buying rosin as someone who would consider themselves more of like a connoisseur. I do think live resin when it comes to vapes is a lot better option. You get a lot more bang for the buck, and I really don't recommend that people consume distillate. I feel like in like 30 years we're gonna have a lot of reports saying how bad it was to consume distillate. So distillate is kind of out of the question for me. Not down to consuming anything with distillate, and I'm not judging you if you are someone who does, but it's just not for me. Gives me a weird high. Definitely not the experience that I'm looking for. Rosin is much closer, but with the distillate vapes, since you're only getting THC and some like added terps, ends up feeling weird. It's more of like a shallow, empty high, if that makes sense. So live resin, definitely a better option. But here in Michigan, a lot of live resin companies do what's called CRC. So they will remediate the material going into these pens. So you'll have live resin that is essentially kind of like a distillate because everything has gotten distilled out of it or remediated out of it, which, you know, improves the appearance of the vape cart. So you see it and you're like, oh, that's really clear oil, it must be really good, but you're probably smoking some boof that's been remediated. With rosin, I do appreciate that they can't really remediate, otherwise it wouldn't be considered rosin because you would introduce some solvents. So I do appreciate that. If I am grabbing a pen, it pretty much has to be rosin. But that goes back to the price debate. It's like if I'm buying a pen that's $40, $50 for a half gram, and I can buy the same company's rosin for $5 to $10 more for a full gram, really what's the point? I highly recommend that people get an e-rig like a Puffco Peak or a Carta Sport. I actually just dropped a video on if you guys should buy an e-rig, and I think they're a lot better option. Much more effective in terms of getting high, definitely get me where I want to be, and in the long term you end up saving a lot of money. Yes, Puffcos and Cartas are over $200, but if you think about it, you know, that's only like 4 or 5 pens. So like including tax and everything. So once you do that math and think about all the money that actually dabbing is going to save you, and the experience that you're going to get is going to be better versus just hitting a pin, you start to realize like, oh, it might not be worth it for the convenience. I do understand the smell factor. I'd say that's probably the biggest thing. Dabs do smell a little bit. Even if you're hitting a rosin pen, it's gonna smell pretty bad, but I do think there's ways around that. I lived in an apartment where I couldn't smoke flowers, so I pretty much exclusively dabbed for a whole year. And I know that might not be feasible for everyone. And I know dabbing is kind of scary to get into and it's a new thing to learn, but I promise you that extra effort is going to save you a lot of money in the long run. And you're gonna be way happier with the experience you get. I could sit here and I could smoke this whole pen. And like I said, this is not like a cheap pen, this is a rosin pen. I can smoke this whole thing and not really be where I want to be, whereas like I could go take one single dab and it's just gonna hit me way better, probably be way higher for way longer. Another thing with pens or like vapes in general is it's really hard to find rosin pens in screw-on, so you're kind of at the disposal of the company and really depends on what hardware they've picked. This one, for example, can't really like rip it. Like I've had pins that are a lot worse, honestly. I think the airflow on this is pretty decent, but if I want like a huge hit, I can't really achieve that with this. Whereas like a dab, you know, you can take however big of a dab you want if you have an actual rig, and even with an e-rig, you have a lot more control over that. You can get a lot more volume of smoke in your mouth quicker. Pause. And also your experience with a vape is going to change throughout the vape. If you buy a vape, it tastes really good, it's awesome. You could get like 3-4 hits into it and the flavor can completely change or go away. I've had that happen with a lot of rosin pens. I'll hit it a few times and be like, oh my God, this tastes crazy. And then you get into it and you're like, oh my God, this has no flavor. It almost tastes kind of burnt. Not very enjoyable. So I don't know, there's a lot of issues that I have with pens, and I am very lucky to be in the position that I'm in. I got this one from a vendor. I got this one from my girlfriend. She works at a place where she gets samples, and these inner circle ones have actually been really solid. I'm not someone who is against using pens, but I am kind of against buying them. It's been probably 6 months to a year since I bought a pen. I just am lucky enough to get them for free, but even if I don't have one that I got for free, I'm not really tempted to go out of my way to buy one either. Like, I got this one from Information Entropy. Probably been about 6 months, maybe even longer since I got it. As you can see, I have not finished it. It's been dead. I haven't even taken the time to charge it. That's how much I don't care about vapes. This was a really good one. This was one of the better ones I've had, actually. This was the Fly God from them. Very tasty, very enjoyable. Actually did kind of hit me, but I just don't care about vapes. Like, when I have good flower, when I have good rosin with an e-rig or even an actual rig, which I would prefer, there's just so many better options opposed to vaping. And I do understand it's not like feasible for everyone. The whole smell and convenience thing is hard to get away from, so I do understand that draw of it. But get Puffco Pivot, there's options. We can work around it, and things are getting better in terms of devices like that, and I haven't really seen much improvement in like these types of vapes. I do think like the O2 ones are the best, so if you do see one of these like glass tank ones, I prefer those. I feel like I've had the best luck with those, but even then, not even close to taking an actual dab or smoking actual flower. Not the experience I'm looking for, not the flavor experience I'm looking for, not the high I'm looking for, not the cost-effective way to go about it. I think there's just a lot of pitfalls of vaping, and I think people, due to the convenience, are so accustomed to them and really haven't like taken the time to step back and be like, oh, maybe this isn't the best way for me to be spending my money on cannabis products. So with all that being said, I think I'm gonna get out of here. I pretty much just rambled for like 8-9 minutes about why I don't like vapes. But if you guys have any differing opinions, or if you have any like things that I haven't thought about or touched on, let me know down below. I'd be interested to hear you guys' thoughts, because vapes are huge. Vapes are like I said, the biggest seller. I just can't really get behind it or support it. I have a really hard time. Yeah, I don't know. With all that being said, I'm gonna get out of here. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.